Hello and welcome to Think Ahead TV, our platform for sharing insights, news and the latest in EdTech innovation within higher education. I'm Max Oliver, the Event Director of Ahead by Bet. In this episode, we're exploring the role of the student voice in university strategy, culture and values. The student experience has been radically transformed in recent years, and as a result, we've seen more students taking on an active role in learning design and course creation. Today, we'll be hearing from Simon Walker, Director of Programme Development at University College London, on why it's essential for students and university staff to work together. We'll then hear from two UCL ChangeMakers student fellows on how universities can work in partnership with students to revolutionise the learning experience. Let's get this episode of Think Ahead TV underway. Hi Simon and welcome to Think Ahead TV. If you could just describe briefly for us what your role is at UCL.
Yeah, thanks very much for inviting me. So I'm Director of Programme Development, which means working with all new programmes who are developing new curriculum for the 21st century. So a lifeblood of a university, it's its portfolio. So we're there to help them think through the decisions they're making about their student experience and their educational offer. And I'm also academic lead for assessment, which means that we've been exploring new forms of digital assessment, remote assessment. Obviously that really kicked in lockdown, but also thinking about new forms of digital delivery, using AI for supporting feedback and marking, those sorts of things.
Perfect. And you mentioned student experience. What university values are sort of top of thought when it comes to student experience, do you think?
Yeah, I think probably listening to students is the main one, sort of understanding that or recognizing that they're experts in their own right about their own learning. I think it's also about resisting the sort of narrative of students as consumers. So that's been with the rise in fees of universities, that's sort of come into play, that I pay for my university education, therefore I should get it, sort of thing, rather than trying to encourage them to be active participants in shaping the future of their education. That means engaging with them in partnership activities, co-design of lots of things, but generally just encouraging students to be as active as possible and as engaged as possible.
Yeah. And how do you think that last 2+ years of disruption has changed and really reshaped the student experience moving forwards?
Yeah, I mean, enormously, I think.
Big question.
It's a huge question. I think we've seen a real crisis around poor mental health. There's a big emphasis on, right emphasis on student well-being. I think that students they've become very familiar with engaging online. Obviously, that if they're coming straight from school, a lot of that school experience has been absolutely kind of coloured by that experience of being sort of in lockdown. So I think that this sort of coming year, we're back on campus in person, and I think it's about encouraging students to be as kind of interactive as possible with staff, and I think supporting their confidence to be as active as possible, understanding what social engagement looks like. I think they've been immersed in a kind of, this Generation Z, they're called.
Yeah.
Immersed in kind of social media. I mean, bombarded by social media, I think, and all the kind of images that go with that. So I think it's our role really to help them and guide them through that.
And how do you think, if we think back to, let's say, 2018, 2019, pre-pandemic, how do you think this fully in-person experience, now we're in 2022, is going to be different to what it was before?
Yeah, I think it will be. I think there will be things that go back to kind of whatever normal might be. I think we've all been told that we will go back to campus and have in-person experiences with students. I think it's probably the right thing to do. Obviously, during the pandemic, we all became very used to using technology, and that was good in many respects. It allowed staff to become very skilled in using the technologies that we always had kind of thought would be good technologies, lots of kind of affordances there. It opens up access and is very inclusive. At the same time, I think they really missed out on that kind of in-person experience very largely and the development of that in-person community. So I think this year's going to be really interesting because there will be a sense of coming back into the classroom or lab, lecture theatre, and trying to engage in that kind of way, at the same time recognising that we're actually better skilled, we're more skilled in terms of using technologies. So it's trying to work out what that new blend might look like.
Yeah, perfect. Will the hybrid approach still be taken at UCL, or is it solely in person? Are we going back to?
When you say hybrid, do you mean high flex or hybrid?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, I'd say more the hybrid approach.
Hybrid, yeah. I think hybrid will stay.
Yeah.
I think there are things which we will do in terms of recording lectures, those sorts of things. I mean, students pay them back double speed.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got to get used to that. But I think one of the things I hope will change is assessment. So I'm hoping that we will go into remote assessment, remote digital assessment. I think some people call that as the kind of the final frontier of higher education. I think it's just another frontier. I think there's a whole bunch of things out there which will impact on that experience. I think we're heading into a big world of AI and support of human-generated language. And I think learning how to work with that is going to be important, but that means big changes to assessments. So in other words, if you're going to set an essay, how do you know the students? It's the student's essay and not an essay produced by AI, for example.
Absolutely. And finally, just one last one. How can staff benefit from working closer with students? And as you mentioned right at the start, listening to that student voice and really adapting with it.
It's really stimulating to work with students. I mean, you just get to hear what the student thinks about their education, about the way in which you're offering that education, what works, what doesn't work. So I would just say it's really empowering for staff to be engaged in partnership with students. And increasingly, I think, around things like co-design of assessment, students are using a lot of technologies. There's an employability agenda for students, which not all staff kind of accept, but I think it's trying to create really meaningful assessments, and I think you can only do that by working with students. But I think students will engage in lots of different ways. So they may engage just by asking a question in a lecture theatre, and that's absolutely fine. Or they may engage with lots of different opportunities that universities offer, and they offer a lot of opportunities for deep student engagement.
Absolutely, and I think we'll find some more out about that a little bit later on as well. Excellent. Thank you very much for your time, Simon, and thank you for joining us as well. In a moment, we'll be hearing from 2 UCL students on the importance of student and staff partnerships. But first, let's take a quick look at a recent development by the University of Portsmouth. Portsmouth has just launched the Centre for Creative and Immersive Extended Reality, the UK's first integrated facility to support innovation in the creative and digital technologies of virtual, augmented and extended realities. Let's hear from them directly now.
So CCIXR is the Centre for Creative and Immersive Extended Reality. It's an innovative centre that combines a whole suite of facilities that we could say in some senses is the virtual production pipeline. CCIXR, or the Centre for Creative and Immersive Extended Reality, is genuinely cutting edge in terms of its technologies. Not only are the technologies themselves and the studios that we have here cutting edge, but their combination in one building is actually unique. It's really interesting the skills that students will develop as part of working in the facilities here. When students traditionally learnt in lectures, they were told information, would try and remember it and go off into the big wide world. Nowadays though, in a university setting, it's all about encouraging students to learn for themselves and to work together collaboratively. With this cutting edge equipment, it's really important that the students will get to play and explore and develop how to use it. The key thing being though that students will actually develop the skills of decoding and understanding how something works. Whilst this equipment is today absolutely brand new, in a decade or 2 decades, it'll clearly be out of date. But those same students will need to be working with the newer equipment in slightly newer ways. So when the students work in the centre, they'll work in a number of different ways. We have a fantastic technical team here that oversees the running of all the equipment, as we do across the whole of the faculty. The students will work in the facility with the technicians but also with the academic staff and with external partners with whom we're running projects. There are a whole range of courses that will be able to use CCIXR. The facilities are obviously and immediately beneficial to students studying creative technologies and film and media and communication subjects, but they're also incredibly relevant to architecture students and to students studying art design and performance. So what we're particularly excited about is, it doesn't really matter what your background is. These facilities are available and open to use to both people who have a creative background and a technical background, or for those who sit somewhere in between. XR and the virtual production pipeline is obviously and particularly relevant to film, to games and other areas in the creative and cultural industries. What's really interesting though is that over the next few years we'll start seeing these techniques and this equipment applicable in a whole range of other areas. The XR facilities that we have here are immediately and obviously relevant to computer games, to film and TV and other areas of the creative and cultural industries. What's exciting though is that over the next few years, the techniques, processes and products that we work on here will start to become even more relevant in a whole host of other areas, meaning that students that work here and have experience of this will have transferable skills into a whole host of other areas.
I'm now joined by two students from UCL. Molly is in their second year of BA Education Studies and holds a variety of positions across the university, including Lead Department and Module Representative, ChangeMakers Student Fellow, Student Ambassador and Co-President of the Education Society. Tonya is currently doing an MSc in Statistics at UCL, but also works part-time as a ChangeMakers Student Fellow in the UCL Education and Student Experience team, and as a democracy assistant in the Students' Union. That is a lot of responsibility. Molly and Tonya, welcome to Think Ahead TV. I'd love to start by you just telling me a little bit more about your respective roles and what you do.
Okay, thank you. So in the ChangeMakers Student Fellow role, I am kind of working with staff on quite a few different things, but one of the main ones has recently been the CAN conference, Change Agents Network conference, which we kind of helped organize and did a load of workshops on. And then on top of that, with the lead department rep, I kind of represent students across the department on kind of at a variety of different levels and in different meetings. So that's kind of some of the things that I do with staff. Yeah.
Lovely. Tonya?
Yeah, so we share the same role as ChangeMakers Student Fellows, so I was also involved in the CAN conference organisation, but besides that I was also involved in plenty of other projects in kind of that role. I've worked with senior UCL staff on we're doing a project on learning communities and kind of learning more about how students feel about the current environment they're in at UCL. And also I've been on a couple of student panels kind of in a consultation setting with staff members. And in my role at the Students' Union, I'm a democracy assistant, and that kind of sounds very fancy. And I mean, I do like the role as well, but I'm kind of involved in, I guess, student politics, you would say, and student representation. So we're working on union-wide policies. We're kind of the team that helps support the academic reps, such as Molly. And I'm also, I don't think you mentioned this role, but I'm also on the EDI committee of the department I'm in, the Statistics department. So EDI obviously stands for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. And I'm on the student-run subcommittee of that, and we're kind of trying to improve the EDI situation in our department. Yeah, that's it in kind of 2 minutes.
Another role to add to the list.
Yes.
There we go. And you talk a little bit about the student experience. I mean, sum up for me a little bit how that's changed over the past 2 years, and your thoughts and feelings towards it, and also how it can be further improved.
I feel like the past 2 years have definitely changed a lot in terms of education and student experience. Obviously, everything has went online, which brought a lot of positive changes as well. It made lots of things more accessible. Kind of people realized that it's actually possible to record lectures and make it available even after the lecture is passed, which is really good for students who are not able to attend in person as normal. But I do think it has also posed a few, I guess, challenges, namely that education has become very impersonal because everyone's just sitting at home, and this kind of leads to isolation. And what we're seeing, that lots of students tell us that they don't feel like they're part of a learning community or kind of any sort of community at UCL. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there are some really great things that have come out of kind of moving things online and using kind of digital technology in higher education to improve engagement. And I think that's something that we need to continue thinking about. But then at the same time, there's also been this feeling of a lack of community in some ways, or at least from what I've seen. And so it's really important that we kind of look at that and think about how we can engage students using the technologies that we've kind of reviewed and that we've used over the pandemic, but meanwhile kind of trying to fill in those gaps that students have found during the pandemic as well.
So in short, you think the big improvement would be if you could improve sort of the community feel of what's changed. That would be how you'd improve the student experience moving forwards.
Yeah, I think creating more inclusivity, creating accessibility to more education content, and also to kind of break down some of those walls that sometimes we see in institutions where, you know, we have students fulfilling their role as a student and teachers fulfilling their role as a teacher, when I think really we can kind of engage in new ways and think about how we can improve the experience for everyone.
Yeah, and be a little bit more collaborative as well. And I think that comes on to sort of my next question is, how can we encourage more students like yourselves to further collaborate with staff and further roles within the university moving forwards?
I would say if we're kind of expecting students to engage and collaborate, we need to be able to reach out to them and make sure that not only students who are kind of outspoken and typically kind of interested in student-staff partnerships are kind of involved, but also those who might not think of themselves as kind of a student rep or in one of the roles that we've talked about. So I think really reaching out to those and making sure that all student voices are heard or at least represented in the room is important. And that kind of also links to creating a better community and letting students know that they will have the support they need. For example, if you have someone commuting or someone who also has a part-time job on the side of their studies, that they're going to be supported enough to contribute in the ways that they want to contribute.
Yeah. $1 million question, how do we get the sort of lesser spoken up voices involved as well?
I think it's about reaching out to them. I think it's about saying, we want to hear all of your voices. We want to know what you're thinking. We value student voice and we value your contribution to this institution, and letting students know that you know, if they want to get involved, there is support there for them. And I think that's something that UCL does quite well, actually.
Nice. Okay, Tonya?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Molly said. I just wanted to add maybe one more point, that I think reaching out is a really good starting point, but we also need to make sure that students will understand and believe that by getting involved, things can actually change. Because I think actually many students have strong opinions about their education, obviously, because they are the main stakeholders, I guess. But I think lots of people are scared to get involved or just not bother because they don't think that anything could change, or don't think that you know, just telling someone their opinion would, you know, get them anywhere. So I think we need to make sure that students feel that they are listened to, that their voices are valued, and things are actually going to happen. There is a set outcome, and that, well, I guess when there's an outcome, we should tell students as well kind of the time frame when that will happen. Yeah. So I think that would definitely help engagement.
And I think what benefits do you see a student would receive from working a little bit more collaboratively with staff and SLT? Where do we think we can see the student benefit there?
There's plenty of benefits. I think we both know that very well. But I think my main one is that we get to understand kind of the other side which I guess the average student just sees as the other side, very dark, very in the dark. We don't know what's happening. Yep. Students just really like to kind of, blame staff. Staff sometimes like to blame students. I'm not scared to say that, but I think by getting involved in these partnerships, it kind of makes you empathize more with the other side, and you understand the challenges the other side is facing. And on top of that, I think you also learn to kind of advocate for yourself and your peers as well, because you obviously need to kind of represent your whole student cohort, and gain a lot of confidence and public speaking skills.
Nice.
Yeah, I would completely agree with all of that. Yeah, I think for me personally, I found a great community, as we were saying, in doing these types of things, and in building a community. I realized how important it is, and kind of broken down some of those walls. I've realized, that we kind of both value each other's, staff and students both value each other's kind of thoughts and opinions, and if we can work together, we can create, a better experience for both sides. So yeah.
Amazing. Molly, Tonya, thank you very much for your time today. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Think Ahead TV. We'll be back in September with a new episode for you. But in the meantime, keep an eye on our Think Ahead hub, where we'll continue to share interviews, news, and recorded sessions from our 2022 event. Check out our social media channels and subscribe to our newsletter for more information. For now, from all of us at Ahead by Bet, thank you for watching, and see you again next time.